I absolutely cannot walk out on this. Okay, much better. Now I have my ice spikes on. No slipping. Excellent. So I've never been to this location before. This is Marble Canyon in Kootenay National Park. And the hike into it is really just right next to the road. I think I'm coming up on my first possible composition here. So, oh yeah. Like you can see right into the canyon. I don't think this is anywhere close to its deepest part. Now, this location is one that I really like. I don't know that I'm going to get a lot of sun because it's quite cloudy. And what that'll mean is that this peak up here, which I was thinking originally about shooting, that's not going to get any light. Or it's unlikely to, at least. Who knows what's going to happen. So I like this bend in the river here. I might head down to this beach area and find some interesting foreground. And hopefully I can see this mountain here in the background. I've got 23 minutes till the sun rises. So there's a path. Looks like something I would be able to come through. Probably isn't, but can get used like one. Now that I'm down here, all I need to do is make my way around this rock under the tree, and I have arrived. Okay, so I've just done a little bit of scouting, trying to find out what parts of the snow are safe, and I've come across what I think is going to end up being my composition, because with a wide angle lens you want interesting foreground, and these interesting tufts of snow over, I imagine, boulders are going to be an interesting foreground. The scene I'm going for, I think, is going to be a very tall vertical composition. I'll probably be right there. Here's the foreground element that I want, and then I'm gonna go all the way to the top of this tree in the center, because I think the sky is going to get really interesting, or at least moody, as as these different levels of clouds start to light up. So I'm not really paying a lot of attention to the river, although that will be in the composition. It'll sort of lead off into this side, and it would be great if there was some light. There are a couple of mountains over there. It'd be nice if there was some light over in that direction, but I'll try to just get these trees to really show just how tall they are sitting in this landscape around this nice river. So the first thing to know about wide-angle lenses is that they distort reality, in that they make your scene appear a lot wider, but also stretched. Let me show you an example of this. This tree is right at the edge of the lens, and so if I were to bring it in center, you would see that it would look a little less tall. You see that? It just gets a little less tall. And as I bring things closer to the top, it starts to stretch them out, right? So watch as this happens. So you can use that to your advantage, because it will make things appear larger or smaller depending on how you want them. You can make this tuft of snow appear very small or appear very large. You can see as I bring it back, it begins to simply creep down towards the edge of the frame. So let's talk a little bit about some of the different perspectives you can get with a wide-angle lens. A wide-angle lens has the ability to make things appear a lot smaller than they are, depending on how far away they are. This mountain over here, if I zoom out to 35 millimeter, which is about kind of closer to what your eye would normally see, it's a really, really large mountain. As I zoom out, it's not just that I'm getting more of the edges of the frame, it's that that mountain is getting smaller and smaller. Wide-angle lenses have the ability to make distant objects appear miniature, appear very small compared to things in the forefront. And actually, you can tell the difference between this. If you look at this foreground elements of these tufts of snow, you can see this one, just right here in the foreground, appears to be relatively larger than the mountain in the background. Of course, that's not the case. This piece of snow here isn't anywhere close to the size of this mountain, but the wide angle lens has created an interesting perspective where things that are close to the frame appear to be a lot larger than they are. Things in the background appear to be a lot smaller than they are. So normally when you use a wide angle lens, you're either going to be pointed down to really, say these trees weren't here, I might get this really interesting foreground element and then this mountain in the background. Or the opposite, you're going to be avoiding the ground altogether and really taking a picture of the sun and the sky. Today I am about here because I want to get a couple of these different trees in the frame, this main kind of curvy one that's interesting in the middle, and I want to get a little bit of this foreground, maybe a little bit of the reflection of the light in the midground, and then a lot of the sky, as that is what's capturing this light, so what's making it really interesting. Here also is an interesting phenomenon with the stretch. If I look up, I can see that the clouds are just puffy, circular, but on this side, they look to be stretched. And really this is just caused by the angles of the lens right at its corners, stretching elements away from the center of the lens. Oftentimes that'll give the vision that there is, these leading lines, these stretching elements off to the side, and will help pull the viewer's eye into the center of the frame because of it. So oftentimes a wide angle lens is known as the landscape photographer's lens. And in my case, that's absolutely true. It is the lens that I have attached to my camera when it's in my bag, almost at all times. It's the first way that I'll look at a scene when I come across it. Long lenses have their place in every photographer's bag and definitely in a landscape photographer's bag. But I find that the wide angle lens adds one thing that a long lens can't do, which is that it makes scenes recognizable. You are easily able to capture the location of a place with a wide angle lens because you're giving the viewer of your photo so much more information about what it is. When I was at Castle Mountain yesterday, if I were to zoom in on one individual peak, you may not notice what mountain that is. But if I show the entire thing with a wide angle lens, much more likely that the viewer looking at that image is going to recognize the scene because there's just so much more of it to look at. So with a wide angle lens, you have to be careful because it can show off a lot of very uninteresting foreground or midground, or in this case, background, in this case, sky, that isn't particularly interesting, doesn't really have anything going on, and it's just mostly blue. Now here I've got this sort of interesting cloud. I'm going to wait for it to come a little closer into the scene. It seems to be coming this way. But it's important that I don't just leave this a big blue void in the middle of my scene here, because it's pointless. It's not really interesting to look at, and it doesn't really convey anything to the viewer other than, hey, the sky is blue. Yeah, we know. Thank you. Okay, I'm here now at Natural Bridge, and this is about the most scared I've ever been because the water is still moving. This part of the ice is very solid, it looks like, but I'm not convinced. I'm going to move quickly and get the hell out of here. So this is a pretty classic wide-angle shot because I can get the ice that's in the foreground, and I think I may even want to get more of the rock. So I've got to bracket this, but I'm gonna do 3 shots, I think. One here, one at the back of this, and then finally I will keep my same focus point more or less, but change my exposure so that I'm not blowing out the highlights in the sky. And I'll be able to merge these together a little later. All right, on now to Emerald Lake. Okay, well, I am here at Emerald Lake with Emerald Lake Lodge just off to the right. There's a little cafe there. Thinking about wide angle shot here, typically what you want with a wide angle lens is that there's some foreground interest as well as you know, a really interesting background, possibly some light, but you want to be able to show the entire location and you want to be able to show off kind of everything that it has to offer. So when I'm looking for a wide angle shot to take, or I'm looking around at a scene, one of the things that I'm doing is taking a look at different interests in the foreground that I might be able to use. In this case, I've got some snow-covered logs that are really quite interesting, but the water of this lake, some of it is still unfrozen, so it's very easy for me to be able to find some foreground interest. The challenge, of course, today or in this location is that many people have been here before me, and so there are footprints all over. So I need to find something that isn't going to have all of these footprints, but is still visually appealing. And once I find a visual interest in my foreground, it's my job to move my camera around until everything that I want to get in frame is in frame. Maybe I've got an interesting reflection of the mountain over here, which I wouldn't really have at a low angle. And perhaps I've got some, you know, interesting detail in these little pools that are here, little parts of the river that I wouldn't have if I go high up. So I will take a look at all of the options, move around with my camera and see what I can find. In this case, I'm in such a beautiful location, I don't think it's going to be very challenging to find something absolutely spectacular. After struggling for a while, this is what I ended up with. I am as close to the ground as really I would want to be. I have kept the reflections that I think are really beautiful in my frame, and I've now sort of started to show off this somewhat interesting piece of the river that's got small stones with small little bits of snow on them, and I really like those. They're kind of cute. Okay, so here it is. I'll show you what this looks like just beside the camera. As you can see, these parts of the foreground are really rather large in the frame when I get very, very close to them. This is the key power of a wide angle lens, is being able to distort reality by making close things seem enormous and making things that are far away seem quite small. Of course, this little tuft of snow is not larger than these two mountains, but that's what it looks like when you get a wide angle lens, especially when you get a vertical shot with a wide angle lens and you use the edges of the lens to distort the reality of the bottom and the top. One of the elements that nearly every photographer takes a photo of at Emerald Lake is this small cafe that's on the corner here. And, you know, at night, it's got some lights on it, lights up, looks very nice. It looks very Rocky Mountain because it's clearly made out of sort of field stone and you know, nice large timbers. But I haven't come here to photograph a cafe, you know, well, it's in the frame, and so people can kind of take a look at what it is, and maybe that'll help people get an idea of where this is. I'm really focused on my foreground, the nature, the background with the huge, large mountains that are covered in snow. I'm going to try two entirely different framings for this exact same scene. One with my camera nearly level, and one with the camera pointed down. And I hope to show off the difference between the elements in the foreground and the elements in the background, and how they change a little bit given where they are on the camera lens, given where they are in the frame. So initially I framed this scene up, which is quite tall. There's really nothing going on in the sky here. If there was some interesting clouds, some color, I'm sure this would be an absolutely magnificent scene. One of the things that I do like about this particular framing is that I've got these two trees, the tips of them here, and reflected in the water just below. And I like this framing, but I don't think that the light is really going to support it particularly well. I'll go ahead and take it anyways to show off the difference. Okay, so now that I have those shots, I'm going to move the camera a little bit down so you can see what I'm about to do next, which is that I'm going to magically make my foreground a lot larger, and I'm going to make the mountains in the background a lot larger as well. When I lean this down, you will see that the mountains become slightly elongated, and this has to do with the way that this wide-angle lens works, because the lens will distort parts of the image that are closer to the edge of the lens, and when you're doing vertical, that's the top and the bottom. I imagine that I'm going to need to crop this frame, so I'm going to go down to 4:3. I still have my foreground element, although now there's some additional rocks and things, which are really quite beautiful. I have the reflection of the trees, although I don't have the tip of the trees at the top there. I still have the mountains and the reflection of the mountains, and I'm really quite happy with that. But you can see that this is an entirely different image than the one that I just took, because the mountains seem much larger than they were previously, and my foreground is a little more predominant in my frame. Three major rules that I use when using a wide angle lens is to get low, to point your camera either down or up, and the third is to find an interesting foreground element that you can feature. Take advantage of the lens distortion, the way that it distorts reality, in order to get very close to an interesting object and pull it out of the scene, make it a lot larger than it would appear to be. I hope you've learned something about how to use your wide angle lens. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.